Hey, I'm Jim Sear.
And I'm Jocelyn Youat.
And you're listening to the Avoiding Chores podcast.
Where I am graduating from high school and it's 1984.
Oh my god, 1984. This is where the Walkman takes over my life and I watch videos incessantly, Jocelyn.
I never owned a Walkman.
Oh my god. This is when I picked
I don't know why.
We drove down to Moncton. 4 or 5 hour drives. It was before 4-lane highways.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Saved up all my Christmas money to buy this Emerson cassette deck, which took, I don't know, 4 AA batteries at the time.
Emerson, I remember that.
Emerson, right? It was blue. Maybe Huey Lewis in the News Sports was out in 84. I can't remember exactly. Maybe. I can't remember. But we're talking about 1984. This is where, folks, if you're not familiar with this series, we started way back. We're talking about the 80s, and you said, you know what? Let's just focus every year for the next 10 episodes. We're up to 1984.
And listen, it's no surprise that you're talking about Walkmans and talking about music, because you and I were teenagers. Actually, in 1984, you weren't quite a teenager. I was 12. Yeah, and I was turning 17 in the summer of 84. But, you know, those are the years where you're so into music and it consumes kind of most of your free time. And, man, you know, Phil Collins, Billy Joel, they were big. David Bowie, Bruce Springsteen.
Yes.
It was Duran Duran with the Reflex. That was, I mean...
oh, my God, that was huge.
Oh, and their videos were pretty amazing. I mean, I was way too important to listen to Duran Duran because I liked rock. Now it's funny. You kind of were set in one camp back then, right? You were either you were either a metalhead or kind of a general purpose rock guy or a pop person, and there was no way that you could, you know, go between those different types of music. Today's kids don't do that. Today's kids listen to what they listen to. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. Well, it's funny because so you grew up in the big metropolitan Montreal in Quebec. I grew up in the woods along the U.S.-Canada border where all my radio and all my TV was U.S. based. So I had top 40 until I left for university. So Duran Duran, like anything that made the charts, I heard. So Duran Duran, I saw it, and by then I believe Music Plus or Much Music started to crop up in Canada, and start to see some videos, watching Switchback on Sunday mornings, or for us here out east, we had a Friday night or Saturday night video show where we were playing all these videos. Frankie in Hollywood or whatever, the Reflex.
Frankie Goes to Hollywood, yeah. No, I think Frankie was a bit later, but yeah, I mean, you listening to the top 40 would have had more of a diverse musical experience than I had, because I was listening to a radio station here in Montreal called Chom FM.
Yep,
and
Chom.
Yeah, you remember that, right? And Chom was all about rock, and today it's a lot about classic rock, and not just that, it still plays current stuff, but it was all about only rock, you know, kind of not going into extreme heavy metal, but you know, towing that line, but certainly not going down into into pop. You know, you never would have heard Tina Turner on Chom, for example, right? So
yeah.
So that was kind of what I was listening to, but there was there was stuff that was crossing that line. You know, I see a band that was popular here that I really liked in 1984, Ultravox, and you probably didn't hear that because it never made the top 40 in the U.S., but they were big. I mean, you know, it was some of the stuff that was coming out.
You know, and I look at the list of songs back then. You know, Culture Club, Van Halen, their Jump 1984 album,
huge.
Footloose, huge with the soundtrack. Phil Collins,
yep.
Cyndi Lauper with her huge disc at the time, or by then we were moving towards Were we at CD by then? No, still
Not
cassette.
yet. Not yet.
Nah,
Yeah.
videos were still driving it. Prince, Purple Rain.
Yeah.
Huge album.
Big, absolutely.
I think it's. I think we need to go back and listen to Purple Rain because there's easily 5-6 songs from that soundtrack album.
Absolutely.
And that counts all the other like Sheila E. and the Times, all that those breakout bands, other bands from the movies. Tina Turner started her comeback back then. Billy Ocean, Wham.
Wake Me Up Before You Go.
One of the biggest, of course, Madonna and all that stuff. But
yeah, lots of stuff. Yeah,
the one I think the cassette because I bought it that I listened the most in 1984 was Hall & Oates' "Out of Touch."
Oh my God, unbelievable! Hey, listen, there was more happening beyond the world of music, and one of my most vivid memories. I grew up in Montreal, but we spent all of our summers in just across the border in the U.S. And in the summer of '84 was the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. And if you remember, as just as a retaliation for the Western Bloc boycotting the 1980 Moscow Olympics, the Eastern Bloc boycotted the Los Angeles Olympics, and that happened somewhat not unexpectedly, but kind of at the last minute. And so we spending as a family, and there were 5 kids in the family, right? So McDonald's was a place we went to, especially in the U.S., right? And McDonald's had put out a promotion where you had these tickets that they gave out when you bought whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. And if the US so the ticket gave you, I don't know, like archery. So it you got the event, and if the US won gold in that, you got whatever, like a Big Mac, and if they won silver, you got a cheeseburger, and if they won bronze, you got a Coke. And so because of the boycott, like we got like Big Macs galore. It was insane because the US won everything because the USSR wasn't there. It was quite funny. I still remember that.
Well, exactly. The only competition the US had was Canada, and Canada only would get like 10 medals out of the 500 that they're giving out, right?
Yeah. I mean, in stuff you still had some of the African countries dominating the long distance races and whatnot. But the point is, the U.S. won medals in categories they shouldn't have won, and it was it was nonstop Big Macs for us.
Oh my Lord.
It was funny.
Oh, that was funny. That was the funny part, but there was also some sad stuff that happened in '84. In December, you had the Union Carbide in Bhopal, India.
That was big.
27 tons of methyl isocyanate. 20,000 people dead.
That is incredible.
And you know what? You don't learn about it unless you go deep. You do a deep dive study wise to learn about it. The funny thing, you probably would know more that the fact that Vanessa Williams, the first black Miss America, loses her crown because somebody found her artsy nude photos and then they got printed in Penthouse magazine.
Was it that long ago? That's incredible. Incredible. That's 1984 is also the year that the big famine happened in Ethiopia, and of course that's a tragedy, obviously. But from a pop culture standpoint, it launched the era of the charity, mega group singles. First with Band Aid in '84, Bob Geldof of the Boomtown Rats having the idea of getting a bunch of artists together, writing a song specifically for this, getting the artists to record it, and then selling the single, and all the profits went to fight the famine in Ethiopia. And we'll talk about the follow-up singles in the next podcast in '85. But yeah, that was the first big one. I mean, Bob Geldof, who was the Boomtown Rats were just kind of a marginal band. They had they had a pretty big hit with "Tell Me Why I Don't Like Mondays." A lot of people remember that, but that was it.
You know what? It didn't even filter down to my neck of the woods because I did not know who he was. And when that came out, I'm like, why are people following this guy? Who is this guy? Because I saw him in Pink Floyd later on in
the movie.
In the movie, The Wall or whatever.
Yep. I think he did the role of Pink.
Yeah. So I was kind of like confused because I didn't really know my music history back then. I know a little bit more now, but it is. But you know what, Jocelyn, we're gonna maybe close off here. Just some other anecdotes here. You know, you think about some of the movies. For me, Terminator, Dune, comic book wise, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first appeared. Now that I'm older and I can appreciate beer, the Boston Beer Company, Sam Adams was founded in '84. You know, there was some '84 was a huge year. Stephen King was in his groove with The Talisman with Peter Straub.
Oh, geez, I remember that. That was a great book. That was a great book.
Huge. Red Dawn, Repo Man, Star Trek 3, Revenge of the Nerds, The Natural with Robert Redford. Great movie. We never watch it now. Great movie, The Natural.
Absolutely. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the fact that the AIDS virus became big in 1984. Yeah. That's when it was identified. I still remember I was in grade 11, which high school finishes in grade 11 in Quebec, and I remember in our French class we had to do a talk about the AIDS virus. It had just started, really. It was misunderstood completely. And here we were as 16, 17-year-old kids having to talk about it, something that we barely understood. And that's still a very vivid memory for me.
You know, and for us in French, we would known as SIDA.
SIDA, that's right.
That was the acronym for the disease there, for
Correct,
the autoimmune disease. But you know what, Jocelyn? I think it would be good for people to go back to listen to Radiolab. I believe the episode is called Patient Zero, where they talk about going back to find that patient zero of the AIDS virus. Really good background on that. It's good to get that information afterwards. But yeah, it was after '84, things kind of changed a little bit, but then
everything was different.
It was different, but it didn't affect me until a few years later because, I was too young to know what was happening for that.
Understood, but I think we came of age. I mean, and I was 17. It was probably more important to me at that time, and than it was for you because you were a bit younger. But I mean, I think everything was different afterwards.
Yeah,
but
true.
Hey, we can't have this end, on this sad note.
No.
This was also the year where we had shows like Magnum PI being big, and Cheers was around back then.
The Cosby Show, the A-Team.
The A-Team.
Yes.
Wow. Mr. T.
I'll tell you, 84, man. That was like... Hey, were you like me? You watch Friday nights Dallas, or was it Saturday nights? I can't remember.
I didn't watch Dallas.
What?
I'm telling you, I didn't watch that.
You missed out. I can't even describe what the show was, but I know I watched it.
Nah, it wasn't my thing at all. I was more into... some of the cop shows like Magnum PI and obviously some of the comedies like Cheers back then.
That was crazy.
That was kind of it.
Well, other than that, in terms of popular Christmas gifts, Cabbage Patch Kids again in Trivial Pursuit were kind of hot. Transformers were starting to take control of little boys' Christmas lists, and you know what? Tetris started to come out in '84. We wouldn't see until much later, but...
Well, actually, I'll tell you that I saw Tetris in 1984 because I was playing I'm not even going to talk about what the game was, but it was no. It's just a bit complex to talk about.
Yeah.
But I actually met a guy. It might have been 85 actually, but I met a guy who had downloaded. Imagine this. Because there were modems back then, right? And
That's
they
right.
were 300 baud modems. Yeah, 300 baud modems that you put the handset into.
That's
and
right.
This guy had managed to get a download directly from the guy who wrote Tetris in Russia. This was
really?
the USSR. He got it direct from there.
He got it on some bulletin board, some BB board.
On a BBS, yeah.
Took half a day to download.
Totally.
What would be half a second for us now?
Yeah, exactly.
Download.
No, just amazing. I can tell you that I saw
Wow.
it before it was commercialized. I still remember that to this day. Wow. But anyways, we will talk about that for sure in another episode because that's when Tetris became big. So let's wrap it up for this one.
All right, you know what, Jocelyn? That is correct. So, folks, if you like this episode, give us a nice rating review on Apple, Google Play, Stitcher, whatever you want to do. You can go back and listen past episodes on our website, avoidingchores.com. Follow us on Facebook. Just search for avoidingchores.com.